Rome, 1600. In a silent square, surrounded by hooded monks and armed soldiers, a man was chained to a wooden post. His name was Giordano Bruno. His crime, claiming that the soul was infinite, that the universe had no end, that thought shaped reality. When the flames began to lick his legs, he did not scream, he did not beg, he simply uttered a phrase that time could never consume. They will light this torch, but they will never extinguish the truth. What few know is that before being arrested, Bruno sent a small sealed metal box to a hidden monastery in Padua. Inside were fragments of cipher texts, alchemical diagrams, and reflections he had never dared to express in public. What you are about to hear is not mere theory or simple philosophy. It is a faithful reconstruction of Bruno's most radical thought, a vision of the universe, the soul, and reality capable of subverting everything. You will also find fragments of his interiority. This is why it is important that you pay attention to every word, not for me, but because this legacy was written for those who are ready to remember. Because if his sacrifice had a purpose, it was to ensure that you no longer live sleeping. If this beginning has pierced your soul like a truth you had forgotten, then leave a like right away. There is no need to explain anything. I will know. I will know that you are one of those who feels, not just listens. I will know that, like me, you recognize the voice of the Eternal when it speaks softly. That gesture will be your torch lit in the midst of silence. My name is Giordano Bruno, and these words were not written for the world, but for him who is ready to remember himself. I do not know whether you are reading this after centuries or whether you are simply hearing it now, but if it has come to you, it is because your soul stands exactly on the threshold where awakening begins. What you are about to hear was never spoken aloud during my lifetime. Not in Paris, not in London, not even before my most devoted disciples, for there are truths that cannot be taught with words. They reveal themselves only through experience, and I understood it too late. It was not contained in a book nor in a formula. It was on a night when I was at risk of death that the universe showed me what no one had ever explained to me. It happened in Venice. I was alone, feverish, lying on the stone floor of a rented room. I had argued with an ignorant nobleman who had accused me of heresy. That same afternoon they stoned me. The fever came in the night, like a celestial bite, and in my delirium I saw my life not as a succession of memories but as projections. It was as if everything that had happened to me, every betrayal, every loss, every fall, was the consequence of something that I had unconsciously emanated. I saw the fear I had carried with me since childhood, the guilt for asking questions, the desire to be accepted by those who didn't even know how to accept themselves. I had projected all of that along my path, and the world had only reflected back to me. It was then that I understood. I was not living what I deserved. I was living what I had not yet transmuted within myself. I sat down, still trembling, and began to write on a torn sheet of paper. The universe is a mirror, and you are the one who holds the frame. The next morning, my body was weak, but my consciousness was fully awake. That was the beginning of everything. I called that discovery the invisible map of the soul, and I understood that every human being walks within an interior structure composed not of roads, but of thoughts, not of cities, but of archaic emotions, often inherited, that determine the paths that life will follow. From that moment, I began to observe myself first, then others. A Roman fisherman repeated his father's mistakes without realizing it. A noblewoman attracted cruel men, even though she claimed to long for tenderness. A child never seen became an adult that no one listened to. Everyone walked inside invisible maps just like me, and I understood that freedom does not consist in eluding destiny, but in redrawing the interior plan from which reality originates. If in your life there is something that repeats itself, if there is a pain that seems eternal, do not interpret it as a punishment. Consider it instead a sign, a coordinate, an exact point on your map that asks to be transmuted. You are not reacting to the world. You are projecting it. And if you change inside, the world will begin to change too, without you having to force it. That was my first great secret. And that is why I am writing it now. Because if this voice still resonates, it is because it never died. It was just waiting for you to remember it. But remembering is not always easy. Sometimes to do so, you have to go much further back, even to childhood. Because many of the paths we take today without understanding why were traced before we were even aware of having a choice. And if you allow me, I want to take you to the moment when I understood that not all my thoughts belong to me. I was 7 years old the first time I heard my father tell me to be quiet. We were in the fields, picking up stones from the road to prepare the new garden. I asked him why the rich owned such vast lands if they didn't work them. He looked at me, pressed his lips together and murmured, "Don't ever ask me that again. It's not safe, not for you, not for me." That day I learned something, not about the world, but about fear. And that fear was not mine. I had inherited it, I had carried it with me for years without knowing it. It accompanied me in my silences, in my repressed ideas, in my postponed dreams. And only much later, when I was already a man haunted by my own words, did I understand. Most of my thoughts were not authentic. They were archaic voices, voices of parents, of teachers, of systems that had instilled ideas in me like seeds, without my realizing it, beliefs that imitated my inner voice, but that had not been born from my soul. How many thoughts that live in you today do not really belong to you? How many times do you make decisions for fear of disappointing a figure that no longer exists? How many times do you feel guilty for something that should never have hurt you? When I understood this, I felt dizzy, as if my mind were a temple penetrated by foreign presences. I thought I was free, yet I lived immersed in borrowed ideas. In Paris, I had a rhetoric teacher whom I deeply admired. He maintained that every thought must pass 3 tests before being accepted. Do I know it from direct experience or only because I have heard it 1,000 times? Does this thought expand me or confine me? Would I choose it if I were not afraid? Only 3 questions, but if you ask them sincerely, many of your certainties crumble, and that, believe me, is a blessing. Because when you dismantle a thought that is not yours, you recover a fragment of your soul. If you are hearing these words, try it. Now choose a thought you have about yourself, one that hurts you, that limits you, and ask yourself, who instilled this idea in me? What voice? What gaze? What moment planted it? If you cannot identify it, it is very likely that it does not belong to you. And if it is not yours, it has no reason to continue to govern you. Today I see clearly that much of human suffering does not arise from the soul, but from the echo of inherited, imposed, infected thoughts, thoughts born of fear. But you can choose not instantly, but step by step. Every time you choose a thought born from your truth, a part of your reality begins to transform. I learned this late, but you do not have to wait for the fire to come. You can wake up much earlier, and if these words resonate in you, it is not because I spoke them, but because they were already inside you, waiting to be recognized. It was during my retreat at the monastery of San Domenico Maggiore. I was 20 years old and began to study philosophy with deep devotion, but there were nights when something in me broke for no apparent reason. I isolated myself, became cold, aggressive, impatient, judged myself internally, and then pretended that everything was in order. An old friar had been watching me for weeks. One evening, while I was sweeping the cloister, he said to me, "Your light is intense, but you use it to hide inside it." I didn't understand. Or maybe I didn't want to understand. But that sentence haunted me for days until one morning very early, I decided to lock myself in the chapel without light, only with a candle. I sat down, facing myself without praying, without writing, simply watching. And that's when it manifested itself, not as a figure, nor as a demon, but as a pure emotion. Anger. Anger for being silenced. Anger for not being seen. Anger for carrying a fire that no one knew how to guard. I had repressed it to the point that it no longer belonged to me. It had become a shadow, and from there it governed my reactions, my relationships, my decisions. I cried not out of pain but out of recognition, because I finally saw myself whole, without forced purities, without masks, only myself with what I had never wanted to accept. And it was there that I discovered a truth that no book teaches. The shadow is not your enemy, it is the part of you that waits to be seen without condemnation. By integrating it, you recover energy, you recover clarity, and above all, you recover truth. If you are here, listen carefully to these words. What you judge most on the outside is usually what you have not yet wanted to look at on the inside. And the more you repress it, the more power you give it. Today, if you can, if you dare, sit in silence and ask yourself, what part of me have I tried to hide in order to be loved? What emotion do I refuse because I was taught not to feel it? You don't have to fight your shadow, you just have to see it and not run away. From that night in the chapel, whenever something deeply irritated me, I didn't react immediately. I asked myself, what is it showing me that I haven't yet accepted within myself? Sometimes it was my ego, sometimes it was my fear of failure, sometimes it was my desire to be remembered. And so, little by little, my shadow became a teacher. If you are still listening, it is because you too are ready to look at what you once avoided. Not to condemn yourself, but to free yourself. And if you continue, I will show you how even what you have wanted to eliminate from yourself can be transformed into creative power. I remember it clearly. It was during the winter of 1576. I was alone in a cell lent to me, in a monastery that had taken me in out of pity, without disciples, without books, without words. I no longer identified with what I had believed in. I no longer stood for anything. I existed as if I had lost all form. I felt unenlightened. I felt absent, without direction, without a name. It was then that I wrote a sentence on the wall with an almost extinguished coal. Who am I when there is nothing left? The next day, I did nothing. I didn't speak. I didn't look for answers. I simply remained in that state of apparent nothingness, without struggle, without purpose, without distractions. And it was there, right there, that the clearest thought I have ever had surfaced. Emptiness is not death. It is a womb. I felt that everything I had given up, the beliefs, the fears, the need to be someone, was not leaving me to destroy me. They were freeing up space for me, space to remember who I am. As if the soul were saying, now that you finally stopped filling yourself with noise, I can talk to you. I have since understood that emptiness is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the sacred space in which consciousness can truly create. Because as long as you are filled with automatic thoughts, with other people's demands, with an unresolved past, you cannot generate anything new. Emptiness, although uncomfortable, is the womb of reality. And if at this moment in your life you feel that emptiness, listen to me. Don't run away from it. Don't rush to fill it with more things, goals, noise. Stay. Listen to it, ask it, what is being born from this silence that no longer finds room in me? What wants to emerge if I finally make room for it? The world fears emptiness, so it fills it with noise. But the wise know that in the center of silence the eternal speaks. From that day, I began to teach starting from silence, not to impose truths, but to maintain the space in which others could discover their own. And that changed everything. If you are here, if you are still listening to me, it is because you too have felt that sensation of being in nothingness. And today I want to tell you that that nothingness is the beginning of everything. The first time I felt it, I was sitting with my back against a stone wall, my eyes closed, my hands empty on my knees, and I don't know how to explain it in human words, but something was there with me. I didn't see it, I didn't hear it, but I knew it, as if the universe was listening to me, even though I didn't say anything. It was a presence that was immense but formless, loving but devoid of sweet words, intelligent but not logical. It was consciousness. and then I understood something that changed everything I had ever learned. Consciousness is not inside you. You are inside consciousness. And that consciousness contains everything: your history, your thoughts, your body, your doubts, your time, your soul. And yet it watches you in absolute silence, without judgment. I knew it without studying it. I felt it without understanding it, and I honored it without having to explain it. From that day on, I stopped feeling alone, even in the worst moments, even when I was arrested, tortured, deported. That presence was still there, sometimes subtle, sometimes vibrant, but always present, not as an external God, but as a living consciousness that I myself inhabited. If you ever felt like no one was listening, stop now, close your eyes, be silent, and pay attention. Not to the words in your mind, not to your emotions. Feel. There is something there, a field, a vibration, that asks nothing of you, but is always waiting for you to notice it. It is consciousness, the invisible fabric that holds everything together, the ocean in which your soul sails. What you perceive as separation is only the surface. But if you become still, you can feel that there is no outside. There is only one, and that one is who you are. If you wish me to continue, I will reveal to you how this consciousness not only supported me, but began to respond, to manifest itself, to show me that the universe not only observes, but collaborates. I was in Padua. I had spent weeks in silence, not seeking anything, simply surrendering to sensation and observation. One night, I sat under a tree, a very old one, with branches curved like mother's arms, and I thought of something simple. I would like a book, just one, a text to guide me. I did not long for it. I did not ask any God for it. I felt it only as a pure intention, an impulse of the soul. The next morning, an unknown monk approached my sleeping place. He didn't say his name, only left an object wrapped in cloth. When I opened it, it was a worn copy of a manuscript by Plotinus, one I had searched for years and now thought impossible to find. The monk never returned, nor did I ever learn where he had come from, but I understood something as clear as day on my face. The universe listens to pure intention, and when there is no resistance, it cooperates. It wasn't magic, it wasn't luck. It was an alignment between what I felt deeply and what the all knew was the right time to receive. From then on, I stopped struggling to get everything and began to understand, to create from certainty, not from lack. And I discovered a silent law that still vibrates today in every corner of the cosmos. When what you ask for is aligned with who you are, the universe does not resist. It collaborates, and you, from the point where you are desiring, because it is not the desire that creates, but the vibration from which it is emitted. If you ask from lack, you project further absence. But if you emanate from fullness, from love, from certainty, reality moves like a reflection. Today, if you need something, do not beg. Feel it. Vibrate with it. Imagine it already present, as if the universe were only waiting for your permission to give it to you, because that is exactly how it is. If you wish, in the next fragment, I will reveal something even deeper, how I learned to understand without fear, and how fear, more than anything else, blocks the sacred flow of creation. For a long time I believed that it was others who limited me, the church, the dogmas, the judges, the inquisitors. But that day I understood something that hurt more than any exile. It was not them, it was me, afraid of receiving. I was afraid that if something good came, punishment would follow. I was afraid of trusting, afraid of losing, and above all afraid of discovering that I was truly capable of creating and of having no one left to blame. It was a rainy afternoon in Ferrara. I had been offered the opportunity to teach in secret, a precious opportunity, but I found myself hesitant, not because of any external danger, but because a part of me whispered that it was too good to be true. I sat alone in front of a lit candle, and for the first time I did not speak to the universe. I spoke to my fear. I said, "I know who you are." You are the memory of everything that went wrong. You are the wound of my ancestors, but you are no longer the leader. You can stay, but you will no longer lead." And it was as if a fog lifted, as if the air began to move again. Because fear is not eliminated by shouting, it transforms the moment you stop obeying it. If a part of you feels unworthy, listen to these words. It is not your desire that is the problem, but the fear of receiving it. It is not the universe that is testing you. It is your unconscious belief that if something comes, it will be taken away. But that idea is not true. It is only a mental inheritance that you can choose to abandon. Now close your eyes and repeat, "I am safe in receiving what my soul has already chosen. The good that is mine will not be denied me. I do not have to pay any price to be happy, because when the soul stops fearing, the flow is restored, and what once seemed like effort becomes synchronicity." In the next chapter, I will share how I learned to sustain that flow, not with force, but with a tool I had undervalued for years: gratitude. For years, gratitude was just a courtesy to me, an expression uttered after receiving something, a habit taught in monasteries as a virtue, but rarely felt with sincerity, until one day everything changed. I was walking alone at dawn outside Leon. It was cold, I had little food, few clothes, few certainties, and yet for some reason my chest was filled with a peace that came not from what I possessed, but from what I recognized. And I said softly, for no apparent reason, "Thank you." Not for something, not for someone, just thank you. Like a sigh of the soul that, for an instant, remembered that it was whole. It was then that I understood. Gratitude is not a reaction, it is a key. It is a frequency, a deep alignment with the truth that you are already complete, even if nothing has arrived yet. And from that frequency, everything that comes finds its place, and everything that has not yet arrived begins to move toward you. From that day on, I began to give thanks before things happened, before I knew if something would work, before I had proof. And everything changed because anticipatory gratitude is faith transmuted into vibration. It's like saying to the universe, "I'm ready, I trust, I'm already on the frequency of what's coming." And if you don't have reasons to be grateful today, create them. Be grateful for your awareness, for your ability to hear these words, for what you are healing, even if you don't see it yet. Because gratitude doesn't wait for results, it generates them. And if you give thanks with all your being, reality adapts to that truth. From that moment on, every time a difficulty arose, I didn't curse it, I blessed it. I said to it, "Thank you for what you came to show me. Thank you for what I still don't understand. Thank you, because you also open a door for me." In the next chapter, I will reveal to you what happened when I began to give thanks even for the pain, and how that surrender opened me to the greatest of paradoxes, that sometimes losing is the only way to find your soul. They had betrayed me for my ideas. They had expelled me. They had confiscated my writings, and even more, they had taken away the face I had built, that of the master, the wise man, the one who knew what he was doing. I found myself with nothing, without a name, without direction, without apparent dignity, and that night I wanted to surrender. I walked to an open field. It was raining. I sat under a bare tree and cried, not as a mystic, not as a philosopher, not as an abandoned child, but as a naked being before himself. And right there, in that moment of rupture, something happened, not outside of me, but inside. A silent whisper, a subtle certainty. Now you are empty. Now you can be real. I understood that I had lost everything I was not, everything I had built to be accepted, admired, protected. But what had not left me was my soul, my consciousness, my power to create, even from the ruins. That night I asked for nothing. I only said, "If this fall serves to bring me back to myself, then thank you." And as I said it, the pain did not go away, but something in it changed. It stopped being punishment and became alchemy. If you find yourself in loss, listen to this with an open heart. What goes away is not who you are. It is what can no longer contain your truth. Life doesn't punish you, it liberates you. And if you let it, every loss can become an initiation, not into something new, but into what you've always been and had forgotten. Being grateful for pain doesn't mean not feeling it. It means not making it an identity. It means looking beyond it and allowing it to show you what you were meant to remember. From that day on, I understood that the soul is not strengthened by success. It is strengthened by truth, and truth often comes in the form of loss. In the next chapter, I will tell you what happened when I stopped running, stopped searching, and surrendered completely to the present moment, and how, without even asking, peace came. It was on a hill near Florence. It was spring. There was no storm, no ecstasy, just a clear gray sky, a bird singing, and my breathing. And for the first time in my existence, I didn't think about the past. I didn't fear the future. I wasn't searching for anything. I was just there, present, breathing, being. And that was when peace found me, not as a feeling, but as a recognition. It was as if the moment itself was embracing me, as if everything I had been searching for years, power, purpose, enlightenment, had always been there, in that now. Silent, complete, enough. I understood that the present is not a passage to something, it is the arrival. That every time I ran away from what was supposed to be, I was running away from what I already was. And when I finally stopped trying, life could show itself for what it was. If your mind is dragging you into the past or pushing you into the future, do this. Close your eyes, feel your body, breathe in gently, breathe out slowly, and repeat inwardly, I have nowhere to go. I am here now. Now is enough. The truth lives here, because the soul does not awaken at another time, it awakens now. Not when you have achieved more, not when everything is settled, but when you stop long enough to realize that you are already complete. From that day on, I understood that the present is not a pause. It is the altar, the place where everything happens, where the soul manifests itself, where the universe listens without words. In the next chapter, I will tell you how, by inhabiting this now with authentic presence, intuition began to speak to me, not from the mind, but from the soul itself, and how I learned to listen to that silent voice that had always been there, waiting for me to stop searching outside. The first time I felt it, I was walking through a small forest in Tuscany. I stopped without knowing why. I felt the urge to turn left, change direction, go off the path. It wasn't fear, it wasn't logic. It was as if something deeper than me was guiding me, without words. A few minutes later, I discovered a hut. Inside, an old sick man who needed help. I cared for him for 3 days, and before he died, he gave me a manuscript. That manuscript contained one of the most revolutionary ideas I had ever read about the relationship between mind and matter. And it was then that I understood. Intuition does not come from you. It comes from what you are, before you are yourself. It is pure consciousness speaking to you from within. I began to recognize its tone. It never shouts, it never imposes itself, but it never makes mistakes. And I understood something that I have never forgotten. The mind argues, emotion reacts, but the soul simply knows. And how do you recognize that voice in the midst of so much noise? With silence, with presence, with honesty. Intuition doesn't respond to what you want to hear. It tells you what is. And when you learn to trust it, your path aligns, without effort, without the need for control. I began to record every intuition I felt, to act on those subtle signals, and little by little life became more fluid, more precise, more real, not because everything was perfect, but because I was no longer walking blindly. The soul has always known the way. It's just that my mind was speaking so loudly that I couldn't hear it. And if you're here listening, you already know what I'm talking about, because you've known that voice too. In the decisions you couldn't explain, in the gentle warnings you ignored, in the certainties that saved you. Today I just want to remind you of this. Your soul knows. It just needs you to listen, without haste, without judgment, with deep respect. In the final chapter, I will share with you what I discovered in my last days, when I no longer had a free body, no public words, no future plans, but I possessed a living truth that what has the most power is not what you know, but what you embody. And now, if you are here with me, if you have listened to each of these pages, if you have felt what I have felt, then you no longer need any more words, because it is not about accumulating knowledge, it is about embodying it. I understood it too late, when I could no longer speak in the squares, when my books had been burned, when I had only silence and a cell left. There I had no one to convince, no audience, no disciple, no defender. I had only my naked soul and the truth I had lived. It was not enough to have spoken of the infinite. It was not enough to have studied stars, souls, subtle energies. The only thing that accompanied me in that confinement was what I had become in the process. Because in the end, the only truth that matters is the one that vibrates in your being, even if no one sees it. And it was then that I understood that everything I had been, everything I had lost, everything I had discovered only made sense because it had transformed me. And if my transformation can help you remember, then it will all have been worth it. So don't memorize these words. Don't repeat them like a doctrine. Make them something more sacred. Live them. If you have discovered that your reality is born from you, begin to create from your soul. If you have integrated your shadow, let that energy become your ally. If you have felt the void, honor its creative power. If you have listened to your intuition, follow it. Because this book, this voice, this legacy is not mine. It is yours. It always has been. I have only come to remind you. And if you ever doubt, if you ever forget everything you have heard, if the world ever starts making noise again, remember this. They will light this torch, but they will never extinguish the truth. And that truth lives in you. With all that I have been, with all that I am now, I greet you knowing that this flame has passed from my hands to yours, and you will know what to do with it. The soul knows. It just needs you to listen to it without judgment and with deep respect. If this voice has found an echo inside you, then stop for a moment and leave a mark, because that's how we recognize each other without the need for words. Write a comment, a memory, emotion, even just a line that is alive. And subscribe if you want to walk together again on this path made of whispered truths and flames that do not go out. Your soul has already understood where it wants to return. I'll wait for you there. May you always be faithful to what you hear in silence. May the forgotten words come back to knock gently, and may your truth, even if fragile, be the fire that guides you. To you who have listened to the end, I do not wish, as always, only light. I wish you the origin, and may you be reborn from there every time you choose. See you soon.